Highlights for today, the 9th of December. Thousands of illegal immigrants have been able to get into soft-touch Britain by using the Eurostar. Reports out today show that there are around 270 pregnant immigrant mothers in the Yarl's Wood Detention Centre in Bedfordshire. The parliamentary watchdog has criticised our brave armed forces for recent allowances. From the belly of the beast, Euro report from Nick Griffin, MEP. Pakistan is deciding this week if it will build up its air defences against NATO on borders with Afghanistan. Israeli forces have used airstrikes and killed 3 Palestinians in Gaza. UK news. Thousands of illegal immigrants have been able to get into soft-touch Britain by using the Eurostar train in what is called the Lille loophole. The train that travels into Britain from Europe has not got a passport check between Belgium and France, which means illegal immigrants can stay or hide themselves on the train and travel all the way into Britain. As little as 300 illegal immigrants were captured travelling on Eurostar in the last 12 months. The British Immigration Minister said that it was impossible to get a passport check set up in Belgium to close the Lille loophole unless the Belgians approved of it. Only a passport check at St Pancras Station in London would stop the Eurostar immigrants. This loophole has been open for years and is still open today and is still ignored by our Borders Control Agency, one reporter stated. Reports out today show that there are around 270 pregnant immigrant mothers in the Yarl's Wood Detention Centre in Bedfordshire. The illegal pregnant women are to be removed from Britain, but do-gooders are crying out to give them their rights. One British National Party spokesperson commented that these women who are pregnant come into Britain from Africa and Asia, have a child and then sit back while the British workers have to foot the bill. Hardly fair when times are financially tough and going to be worse. The parliamentary watchdog has had the cheek to criticise our brave armed forces for recent allowances they have used for armoured vehicles to protect themselves in action against the Taliban. The scrawny Commons Committee is moaning about an extra bill for armoured vehicles at the cost of $2.8 billion extra to protect our British soldiers in Afghanistan. The watchdog says that the vehicles are no use for other engagements. Is some other campaign planned? A nationalist spokesman added that it was the government that sent our brave soldiers out into an unjust war in Afghanistan and they don't even care about protecting them for their trouble. At the start of the Afghanistan war for the pipeline, British soldiers were returning to Wootton Bassett in boxes because they didn't have the full financial backing from the government for the right equipment. One soldier from the Iraq war had said that his army's supply boots were not as good as those the US soldiers had. He commented, "We were buying boots off the Americans for £30 a pair, ours was so bad." Maybe the government were a little short on their foreign aid programme or helping India with its space programme, to see if there are any poppadoms on Mars, one retired soldier added. This week, Nick Griffin has sent us a special report from Russia, where he acted as an independent observer in the elections for the National Parliament, the Duma. For some years, the Russians have allowed observers from liberal internationalist organisations, such as the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. The OSCE has, however, become notorious for producing highly critical draft reports slating Russian electoral practice before the elections have ever taken place. This time, therefore, Civil Control, an alliance of Russian non-governmental organisations, took the precaution of inviting more than 50 genuinely independent observers. These included an American lawyer, a leftist and nationalist MPs from Hungary, the chairman of the Finnish Anti-Fascist Committee, Israeli Knesset MP Ruhama Avraham, members of the Flemish nationalist Vlaams Belang, and Nick Griffin. Mr Griffin is producing a full report on what he saw and heard, and on the stark contrast between the organisation of elections in supposedly democratic Britain and in Russia. When I told Russians some of the blatantly undemocratic practices that lie at the very core of the UK electoral system, they found them difficult to believe, Nick has told World at 8. Mr Griffin also reports that he spoke with many of his fellow independent observers who had been flown to visit polling stations all over Russia. The overwhelming majority told me that they had seen no violations or only very minor technical infringements, such as the disabled voting booth being too close to the election staff, he said. Immediately after the election, Mr Griffin appeared on Russia 1 TV, where he surprised and pleased the presenter and audience by telling them that not only had he seen no violations or dodgy electoral practices on his visit, but that he had been asking officials and opposition activists alike about no fewer than 27 serious failings in the UK system, and had found that not one of them exists in Russia. Nick tells us that he plans to invite a Russian electoral monitoring team to visit Britain during next year's local council and London Assembly elections. It will be interesting to see whether the British state will grant them visas and full access to the electoral process. Don't hold your breath. On the widespread control media reports of ballot box stuffing and the arrest of demonstrators, Mr Griffin has this to say: "The Russians are victims of the same big lie technique described by Hitler and Goebbels. The Times and other internationalist neocon propaganda outlets talk about ballot box stuffing, but everyone who votes has to present their ID card. The staff, who are appointed by a local commission on which all the parties are represented, write down their name and address, and then they sign on the list before they take their ballot paper into the polling booth. Any ballot box which contains more ballot papers than individuals are recorded as having voted is automatically discarded and not counted. So stuffing extra votes in can't be done in Russia, even though it is common in polling stations in Britain, where the polling station staff are appointed by the local Labour Council." As for demonstrators being arrested on polling day, that was because all demonstrations and political activity are banned in Russia on polling day, so that voters can make up their own minds without being pressured by activists from any party or anti-party group. Anyone who has seen the British police refuse point blank to stop Unite Against Freedom thugs handing out anti-BNP leaflets outside polling stations will immediately understand that the Russian system is more democratic. So there you are, more food for thought from a very busy Nick Griffin. This weekend he's speaking at a demonstration against racist attacks in Sweden, where native Swedes are increasingly the victims of violent assault and even murder at the hands of enrichers, and then flying straight on to Italy to attend the annual congress of the Italian nationalist Forza Nuovo party. He's promised us a glimpse of how these events go in his next report from the belly of the beast, which he will be writing for next Friday's World at 8 while in Strasbourg next week. World news. Pakistan is deciding this week if it will build up its air defences against NATO near its borders with Afghanistan. Airstrikes last week killed 24 Pakistani soldiers after a CIA drone strike. The Pakistani government said that the raid was pre-planned by NATO. Officials in the United States have said the strike was not pre-planned and has been trying to solve the problems between the two countries. Important US bases in Pakistan are being thrown out by the Pakistani government. Israeli forces have used airstrikes and killed 3 Palestinians in Gaza. The airstrikes were said to be against militants who were said to have been planning attacks against Israelis. The targets were in a car on a street crowded with people, reporters have said. Palestinians responded by firing missiles into the south of Israel, but no one was injured. And finally, reports from experts at the London Dungeon Museum stated that its 2 skeletons in its crypt exhibition are actually real. For over 30 years, the skeletons have formed a scary attraction in the museum and loved by all. It has now come about that the 2 skeletons, who are named after 2 famous supermodels because of their super slim figures, have to be licensed by the law to appear in public to the cost of around £2,000 per year. The World at 8 team is not too sure how much the skeletons get out of it. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar, and I wish you all a very happy and safe weekend.